Chapter 10. The Ritual and the Mutineers. And I have been remiss in not thanking you all for your reviews and favorites and follows. I apologize for that. I just get so caught up in the writing of my stories that I forget. So please forgive me and take my thanks in the heartfelt manner it is given. Disclaimer. I don't own anything related to Harry Potter. That privilege belonged to J.K. Rowling and all those who she lets make money for her. HPHPHP, July 31, 1987. It was close to midnight, and Harry and Gary were sitting in a clearing behind the manor. It was as far away from the house as they could get, yet still be inside the wards. They had drawn a circle in salt to keep all the magic inside so their parents wouldn't hear or feel anything. They had notes all around them that they were reading to make sure they had everything right. The Weasley twins had sworn that this was something they needed to do to cement the twin bond. They might not have believed them had it not been for the Patel twins standing up for them, telling the boys they had done the same ritual a few months earlier. Their dad did get a hold of the Patels and brought them into the group, which now consisted of 27 children, 20 in their year. The Muggle school had to hire out for more teachers, and a mild confundus charm kept them from wondering where all the extra kids had come from. After school, Lily taught them critical thinking. She got the lessons from a website off the internet designed just for teaching children. Most of them took to it rather well, though not all. Even the year below them had a few extra children, but Dad said that most purebloods that were sending their kids to school decided to do it closer to their home. It was a successful plan, as more and more wizard kids were sent to Muggle schools. Some of the biased pureblood on the Wisengamot tried to stop it, but too many members were doing it with their own families. The Weasley twins had approached the boys about a year ago and had given them this ritual. They told them that they wouldn't find it in any book because it was a twin secret. Part of the ritual was that they could never talk about it unless it was to pass it on to other twins. While the boys hated that they would be keeping another secret from their parents, at least this time they could tell them it was a twin secret, and not even Sally knew, or so they thought. The note said they had to be alone at midnight on their 7th birthday. They were hoping that this day was okay, since technically Gary was born August 1. It's almost midnight. Do we have everything? Harry asked Gary, looking around and gathering up the papers. Yeah, the circle is drawn, the candles are ready, and the knife is cleansed and sharp, Gary said, helping his brother. There couldn't be anything except the knife and them in the circle. The candles marked the 5-point star on the boundaries of the circle. They had no idea where this ritual had come from. The Weasley twins didn't know the history of it either, just that their uncles said it was very old. It was nothing like all the rituals he had read about in the Potter library. It was more like a Wiccan ritual than a wizard ritual. Not that wizard used a lot of rituals. They mostly just used spells unless it was something huge. Gary had looked up similar rituals on the internet and found that a lot of non-magical people used these. He wondered if it actually worked for them. Okay, everything is ready, Harry said, placing the papers outside the circle and pinning them down with a rock. Let's sit in the middle and face each other. I have an alarm spell set just outside the circle, so we will know exactly when to do this, Harry said, a little worried. This would be big. If it worked correctly, he would be able to read Gary's mind. The Weasley and Patel twins said it was not a subconscious thing, though they would always know what each other is feeling. They had to want it to send thoughts to each other to read the other's mind, kinda like a telephone. But still, Harry didn't know if he wanted to read Gary all the time. He only got slight impressions now. Did he really want to know what Gary was feeling all the time, and did he want Gary to know what he was feeling all the time? But he would do this ritual, because if it helped his brother bounce back from the whole boy, who lived depressions he gets every now and then Harry would help. It's what big brothers were for. Gary was of like mind. He didn't want his brother to feel the depression either. However, he knew that this could save their lives one day, so he would do it as well. That's what little brothers were for. Harry lit the candles in the order the ritual called for, starting with the north and going clockwise. He intoned the secrecy spell that was in the notes as he closed the circle. Then the boys knelt facing each other in the middle of the circle. Harry had the double-sided dagger in his hand, laying across his right palm. Gary put his right hand over Harry's, making sure the dagger was across his palm as well. They waited until the alarm went off. They had to do the ritual quickly. It was short and to the point. The boys only had to say 3 lines, but they had to say it in the same time. The alarm sounded, and Harry pulled the dagger down in one quick motion. As their blood mingled, they incanted, "Let it be known that the blood of Harry and Gary Potter hereby binds these twins forever. We stand together, so mote it be." There was a large flash of green light, much like the killing curse, and they leaned together forehead to forehead, hands still clasped, breathing hard, and the dagger on the ground between them. For 1 second, time stood still, and the twins were one. The soul piece in Harry's forehead screamed silently in agony for the love it felt going between the boys. The black piece of magic slowly cleansed and turned a light grey. It was still trapped in the scar, but it would no longer try to influence the child, nor would it show as dark magic on any medical scans. When time restarted, the boys looked at each other and grinned. "That was weird, but totally worth it," Harry said ecstatically, feeling light and refreshed, and he could tell his brother felt the same. "Yeah, I haven't felt this good in a long time. Thanks, bro, you're the best," Gary added, equally happy. They started to take down the circle counterclockwise, and with a wave of his hand, all the blood cleared away. They had gotten pretty good at wandless magic. The other mutineers knew a little bit of it. Well, most of them anyway. There were still a few who were lazy and only interested in sports and didn't want to learn, but since they were still friends, the others just tried to nudge them along. The ritual was done, and the boys were on their way home to finally get some sleep. They couldn't hear each other yet, but the ritual said it would happen overnight while the band realigned. They were just thankful that the circle worked at keeping the magic in and they hadn't woke their parents. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. As they drifted off to sleep, they thought about their group of friends. Sally's suggestion about Muggle moral stories went a long way in helping everyone with that. They all now brainstormed on what kinds of magic should work and what kind to leave alone for now. They were questioning everything and researching on all kinds of magic that was listed as fantasy and Wicca. Everyone's grades escalated, and they were doing really well in school. They still weren't as smart as Harry and Gary, but most of them accepted that. The boys had slowly brought the group's attention to how smart they really were, by helping them with their homework and adding references to essays. Lily had brought out her old Hogwarts first-year school books and showed the kids all the improvements she and Severus had made on charms, transfiguration and potions, so that they didn't go in blind like a lot of kids would. She mentioned the few clubs that Hogwarts had and suggested they ask Professor McGonagall for an empty classroom where their group could study. Maybe one of the classrooms already used for a club, then they would simply use it when it is not in session. That way none of the professors or the headmaster could accuse them of sneaking around. They could open the group to more people and choose who they would add to the mutineers. Remus and Lily were a lot of help with the theory of magic. James and Frank were teaching them some minor politics and laws that would affect minors. Sirius stressed how important classes were if you wanted to play good pranks. The mutineers didn't know everything about the Potter family, but they had all been together for 2 years, and the boys had never lied to them. They just kept Harry's core a secret, and Harry never showed off. The fact that Potter Manor now had 10 computers went a long way in forging the group's solidarity. Many of the children talked their parents into also getting a room set up like the game room they all studied in. A few of the parents, with Lily's help, did so. Unfortunately, not all of them could afford such a room. Computers were quite expensive, and satellite wasn't cheap either. But the Potters didn't mind sharing, so there were many slumber parties. Right now, the mutineers consisted of Harry Potter. Half-blood parents are Lily and James. Lily was Muggle-born. Gary Potter. Half-blood parents are Lily and James. Lily was Muggle-born. Hannah Abbott. Half-blood parents are Gifford. And Mary Mom is Muggle. Alice McFay, Muggle-born, lives near the manor. Parents are Hollies and Kestrel Susan Bones. Half-blood parents are dead. Aunt is Amelia, head of the DMLE Terry Boot. Pure-blood parents are Dee and Albert Mandy Brocklehurst. Half-blood parents are Rachel and Kenton. Dad is Muggle-born Michael Corner. Half-blood parents are Wright and Wren. Dad is Muggle Spencer Jackson. Pure-blood. A year below the boys. Parents are Pearl and Daryl Tracy Davis. Half-blood. Parents are Eric and Grace. Mom is Muggle-born Faye Dunbar. Pure-blood. Parents are Cherry and Lewin Ellie Godfrey, Muggle-born 1 year below the boys. Parents are Austin and Dora Seamus Finnegan, half-blood. Parents are Kiera and Finbar. Dad is Muggle Daphne Greengrass, pure blood. Parents are Celeste and Natalie Astoria Greengrass, pure blood, a year below the boys. Parents are Celeste and Natalie Wayne Hopkins, half-blood. Parents are Jean and Wayne. Mom is Muggle Megan Jones, Muggle-born, brought in by Hannah Abbott. Parents are Peter and Gwenog Neville Longbottom, pure blood. Frank and Alice Padma Patel, pure blood. Parents are Sarita and Maya Poverty Patel, pure blood. Parents are Sarita and Maya Leanne Jameson, half-blood. Parents are Elliot and Amy. Both parents are Muggle-born Luna Lovegood, pure blood, a year below the boys. Parents are Xenophilius and Pandora Percy Weasley, pure blood, 4 years above the boys, and will be going to Hogwarts this year. Parents are Marley and Arthur Fred Weasley, pure blood, 2 years above the boys. Parents are Marley and Arthur George Weasley, pure blood, 2 years above the boys. Parents are Marley and Arthur Ron Weasley, pure blood. Parents are Marley and Arthur Ginny Weasley, pure blood, 1 year below the boys. Parents are Marley and Arthur. They didn't have many Muggle-borns because they had no way of finding them. Most of the group was brought in by Frank and James through their political connections. The next day, Harry woke up to a voice in his head. Harry, Harry, wake up. Can you hear me? You need to wake up to let me know if it worked. Harry sat straight up, realizing that was Gary in his head. He let out a whoop and jumped around his room. Gary came into the room still in his pajamas. Harry, did you hear me? Why didn't you answer? Gary said, grabbing his brother as he ran by. It worked. Sorry I didn't answer you, but I was just too excited. It worked, Gary, it worked. Now I will always know where you are, Harry thought to his brother as they started jumping up and down. Soon James and Lily came into the room to see what all the noise was about. What is you two so excited? Lily said with a smile. It wasn't often the twins got this enthusiastic about anything. Yeah, you're making enough noise to wake the dead, James said, sharing his wife's smile. The boys had a quick conference in their head as they settled down and decided to tell part of the truth. Well, we woke up, started Harry, and felt the bond was, Gary continued, much stronger than last night, so we got really excited and wanted to celebrate. Sorry we woke you, said both twins together. Lily was ecstatic. She had been waiting for this for years. She ran and grabbed the boys and started jumping up and down with them. Oh, I'm so happy for you boys. I've been hoping this happened before you went to Hogwarts. This is wonderful. We should celebrate. Since it is Saturday, do you guys want to go to the zoo again? We haven't been there in years, and we can take as many of the kids from your mutineers who can bring their parents. I'm not watching a large group of 7-year-olds with just me, your dad, and you uncles. Get dressed, start making flu calls and see who can come. We'll leave at 11 a.m. She gave them one more hug and started to run out of the room. Hey, don't I get any say in this? James said with a smirk, making Lily stop her flight. Lily and the twins smirked back and said, no. James' smirk dropped and his shoulders drooped in mock defeat. I see I'm not wanted. Sniff asterisk, I will go and call your uncles and tell them what a cruel family I have. Sigh, where did I go wrong? Throwing his hands in the air in pretend dejection, Lily and the boys looked at each other and tackled James to the floor and started tickling him. After about 5 minutes, they stopped their attack. So, Dad, said Gary with a smile, can we go to the zoo, and will you ask Padfoot and Mooney if they will come? Gary finished. This is fun, but from the look on Dad's face, I don't think we should do it too often, he projected to his brother, looking at the slightly devastated look on James' face. It was the same look he got when the Weasley twins got started. They twin-talked all the time with everyone. Yeah, I think you're right. I also think we should keep it in the family for now. I don't want Dumbledore to know about it. We can't even tell the mutineers because of the whole twin secret that was in the ritual, Harry thought back to him. This is really neat, and I'm glad I can have private thoughts to myself. He thought privately. Don't worry, Dad. We're not going to be like the Weasley twins. We'll be more like the Patels, Gary said, trying to reassure his father. We're just so excited we can do this. But since we don't want Dumbledore to know, then we won't do it outside of the family. Maybe the mutineers, he shrugged. Maybe not. Good, good, because when the Weasley twins get started, I get a pain in my neck just trying to follow them. Okay, now that that is out of the way, what say we all get dressed and eat? I'll call your uncles and see what they are doing. You boys split your list and start asking everyone else. Let me know how many and I'll have one of the house elves make a picnic, James said as he started to walk away. Now that the plans were made, he could go and get ready. Lily went sprinting past him. "I've got first shower," she said as she ran by. James gave chase. Maybe they could share. In the end, around 10 of their friends could come. It was a last-minute thing, so a lot of families had other plans. Fun was had by everyone, and Harry stayed out of the reptile house, so he wouldn't laugh at the snakes, making everyone think he had finally lost it. It was a good day. Chapter 11. A Group Divided. And the chocolate frog cards mention I found on Harry Potter Wiki. Thanks again for the reviews, follows, and favs. Disclaimer. I don't own anything related to Harry Potter. That privilege belonged to J.K. Rowling and all those who she lets make money for her. HPHPHP, July 15, 1989. James and Lily were holding a little get-together with the parents and guardians of the mutineers. They wanted to go over the report cards everyone should have received by yesterday and celebrate good grades. They did this every year. Most of the parents were really impressed with their children's learning. The Potters also had finally decided to see who was going to stand with them about Dumbledore. While they didn't think that Dumbledore was a bad person, they did think he had an overwhelming urge to control everything. This was proven by how many times he came by before the twins were 5 trying to convince the Potters to separate them. He stopped after Lily threatened to castrate him. If he knew that they were going to teach the mutineers as much wandless magic as they could before they got to Hogwarts, he would come and stop it. Because some of the mutineers would more than likely be sorted into Slytherin and Dumbledore. For all he spouted school unity, didn't trust Slytherins or anyone not from a purely light family. The Potters were going to try and get the parents to understand that there were things that needed to happen for the sake of the children. They wanted to have everyone know that the kids wanted to merge into a study group for all houses. They were hoping that they could express how they wanted that to happen and keep the kids from bending to peer pressure. They had done a lot of work with the kids, and now they wanted the parents' permission to teach the kids occlumency and let them know how they were doing in the theory category and wandless magic. The kids had promised not to do wandless magic at their homes since it was frowned upon, though not illegal. The Potters were pretty sure that some did anyway, but since no one complained, they figure that those parents were either proud of the fact that their children were doing so well or that it was such a little thing that it wasn't worthy of mentioning. So far, no knowledge about the magic their children had learned after school had left the core group of parents, and they wanted to make sure it stayed that way in Hogwarts. The Potters knew it was going to be hard since parents like the Weasleys were firmly in Dumbledore's court. The adult Potters were waiting in the flu room, while the younger Potters were in the game room waiting for the kids to join them. The first family to flew in was the Weasleys. "Good to see you, Marley. Where is Arthur?" Lily said, as she led everyone to the room they had set up for the adults, leaving James and Tilly, a house elf that did most of the housekeeping, to wait for the rest. Arthur had to work. He's sorry he couldn't come. Working on a Saturday, I don't know what they're thinking making him work the weekends. I'll tell him how everyone is doing when I get home, the poor dear. Goodness knows that man works too hard. Should I send the kids to the game room? Marley said as she sat down on one of the chairs waving towards her noisy children. Yes, we have one of the house elves, Taffy, watching them. She's really good at tending the children. If something happens, she'll come get us right away. You kids know where the game room is. Harry and Gary are already there. Lily addressed the boys and Ginny. Thank you, Mrs. Potter. I'll make sure they get there, Percy said, heading for the door and motioning the rest to follow. Yeah, perfect, Percy, said George, standing straight and pompous, making Percy stop and glare at his younger brother. We'll make sure said Fred, copying his twin. Don't get into trouble, they both said in a dignified voice, trying to copy their older brother, noses in the air. Leave your brother alone, you two, and just go and play with the others. Behave yourselves, Molly said, glaring at her 2 most troublesome boys. Come on, Ron and Ginny, we know when we are not wanted. The twins grabbed a sibling each and left the room. Percy followed. James came into the room, followed by Sarita and Mayor Patil and Gwenog Jones. Take a seat, everyone, he said, waving to all the chairs. He turned to Lily and said, I've sent the kids to the game room from the flu room, and I have Tilly waiting for everyone else while we get these guys comfortable. I should go back and wait for the others. I don't think the Longbottoms are going to be able to make it, but we can talk to them on the boys' birthday. Okay, honey. I'll help everyone get settled here, Lily said, giving him a kiss on the cheek, and gave him a playful nudge towards the door. After about a half an hour of chit-chat, everyone that was coming settled in the chairs provided with tea and cakes in hand. Mary Abbott, Kestrel McFay, Dee Boot, Rachel and Kenton Brocklehurst, Wren Corner, Cherry Dunbar, Amelia Bones, Amy Jameson, and Pandora Lovegood were the rest that come for the get-together today. Most everyone else was working or had other plans. That was okay, because if everything went as planned, the Potters would send out letters for another get-together with everyone that was not here, and they would continue until everyone that was for the plan was sorted. The ones that showed they were with the plan would be invited back for another meeting and leave the ones against out. Thanks for coming, everyone, James said, after everyone was settled. There are few things we want to talk about, seeing as how our kids are all friends and schoolmates. I figured we could start by sharing the report cards and do some bragging. I see everyone brought theirs with. That's lovely. So who wants to brag about their children first? James said, looking around at all the proud faces. Oh, my boys are doing much better than I thought they would, even the twins. Arthur is so proud and wants to thank you for introducing us to this school and letting him use your computer. I really didn't think it would work as well as it has, said Marley with such pride in her voice, which was rare when talking about her youngest kids, except Percy and Ginny. Those library computers help Arthur so much with his job, though I still think he is working too hard, the poor dear. He doesn't even care that the other departments give him a hard time. He has everyone in his department going to the library and looking things up. He's trying to get the ministry to set up a room like yours there, but they won't. You know what the ministry thinks about muggles, so they won't even listen to him, she said, shaking her head. She had been against the idea of the children going to a muggle school at the start, but now she was happy Arthur talked her into it. Her babies were learning far more than she could teach them. It would do them well when they get to Hogwarts. That's wonderful, Marley. Tell Arthur it's not a problem, and we were happy to help, said Lily as she looked around the table to see who else would speak up. I've heard nothing but good things about that little group they have going on, the mutineers, was it? Faye won't quit talking about them. She goes on about how much she is enjoying school and having so many friends. She was a little lonely before you came and explained to us what you were doing and asked us to join. I think it's wonderful how they all work together. Her grades are marvelous, Cherry Dunbar said with pride. We have a computer room just like yours, only smaller. I can't get Lewin off it sometimes. All he wants to do is look at what sports teams are doing what. He never knew muggles played so many sports. Sometimes I curse you Potters for getting us into these computers, she said with a smile showing she was just kidding mostly. Then her face got serious. I know when we all agreed to send our kids to your home after school, we said that we wouldn't tell anyone what you were teaching them, however. I feel it is time we tell Dumbledore what the kids are learning so he can adjust the teaching accordingly. Amelia Bones, Amy Jameson and Marley Weasley nodded their head in agreement. They trust Dumbledore to do what is best for their children. The rest of the group snorted. They didn't really like the headmaster and didn't trust him because of his politics and his greater good. James and Lily looked at each other. They had discussed this before, and since they had only really taught the kids theory and some minor wandless magic, like summoning and such, they decided to let those that wanted to go ahead tell Dumbledore. The plan was to get everyone else together on the sly and talk about teaching the mutineers more magic in secret, mostly defensive magic, nothing like they were teaching their own twins. They had been hoping not to go with Plan B, but they knew they were only being optimistic. Lily nodded her head. I'm okay with that. If you feel that he should be told, then that's okay by me. We only want to make sure our children got along okay and that they were truly learning in the Muggle school. So now that we know that it worked, you can tell whoever you want. It's fine by us. Does everyone else agree? I'm not sure that's a good idea, Mayor Patel said with his thick Indian accent, looking around the room to see who agreed and who didn't. I don't want the kids shunned or taken advantage of by the other first years. They've all worked hard to get where they are. If others wanted to do that, they should have taught their children just like we taught the Potters taught ours, waving at the Potters. I know James told me that he was approaching everyone he knew and asked us to do the same. So they had their chance, he said, feeling happy the Potters had brought his family into the fold. His twins were closer than they had ever been before, and he knew he had the mutineers to thank for that. Dumbledore had had the opportunity to help them when they had first come into this country, and he did not. His wife nodded in agreement. She felt the same way. The rest of the parents, besides the four, agreed with Maya. They didn't want Dumbledore to know about what they had been up to. The Potters had told everyone that Voldemort might not be dead, though the press and the ministry disagreed with them, and they wanted to give their children every advantage. The four that wanted to tell Dumbledore didn't agree and didn't want their children to think about wars. All of them had lost someone in the last war, and they wanted to believe that peace would last past their grandchildren. It was surprising that Amelia was agreeing with telling Dumbledore, as she had mentioned in the past that she didn't really trust him. The Potters wondered what had changed her mind. No, if you want to tell Dumbledore, then it is your right. If you don't, then that is okay too, Ren Corner said, trying to get everyone calm. We only agreed at the beginning because we didn't know if this was going to work, and we didn't want to get anyone's hopes up. What the Potters started was something that had never been tried before. But no one should tell you who to tell and who not to, he said, sending covert looks at all the disagreeing parents. He had the feeling that there was more going on than what was being said, so he was playing devil's advocate and taking a wait-and-see approach. I want to say that Michael has done really well. His grades are wonderful, and I'd like to be able to brag about him. The discussion went back and forth for about an hour, and it was decided in the end that Dumbledore could be told about what the kids were learning. For the next hour after that, everyone got to brag about their children. No one could really dispute that their kids were learning a lot of things that would help them when they get to Hogwarts, like writing essays and such. The group broke up after about 2 hours. The kids were brought from the game room by Taffy with much noise and complaining. James had few notes in his pocket that he palmed to the people who disagreed with telling Dumbledore while shaking their hands as he said goodbye. On it was a date that they were going to try and get everyone with like minds together. While the adults were talking, in the game room most of the kids were sitting down cross-legged in the middle of the room and enjoying going through their chocolate card frogs and trading them. If they didn't want one or had a double, they discarded it in the middle of the circle, and whoever wanted it would pick it up. The pictures were frozen as they were in the magic null room. So what do you think our parents are talking about? George said as he threw down Alberic Grunion, the guy who had invented the dung bomb. Padma Patil picked it up but didn't replace it. Well, Mum said they're going to celebrate most of us doing well on our report cards, bragging and stuff. And then talk about if we should get more magic education, potion theory and stuff, before we go to Hogwarts, Gary said, as he looked through his cards and plucked Dymphna Firmage, a witch who got famously abducted by pixies, down in the middle to see if anyone wanted it. Playing down what the Potter really wanted to teach the mutineers. I heard my parents talking last night, and they said that they want to tell Dumbledore what we've been learning. Mum said that if they told him we might get special classes. Faye Dunbar said, picking up Gary's card, and discarded Lavin de Montmorency, the witch who invented a large number of love potions. Not bloody likely, Terry Boot said, shuffling through his cards to see if he had any doubles. Dad says that he hasn't changed the curriculum in years, not even when someone wants to learn ahead. Dad said when he was reading for the year ahead he asked if he could get tutoring in charms. Dumbledore told him that he didn't want people studying ahead as it would make others feel left behind. So Dad studied during the summer and just didn't tell him about it. He shrugged, not finding any doubles in his pack. If we want to keep ahead, we're going to have to keep what we're doing secret. Not sure how we're gonna do that, but with Harry and Gary here I'm sure they will come up with a plan. Language, Terry, Susan Bones said, putting her cards down and looking around the room as it started to get serious. Auntie says we should tell him anyway, because there is no way we can keep secrets from the headmaster while in the castle. The Potter twins looked at each other with a little bit of worry. They really wanted to teach those that could keep a secret more than what they were learning now. They had been taught far more than the other mutineers. Their family knew that when Voldemort came back, they would be in the middle of everything. So after all the other kids went home each school night, James, Remus, and Sirius taught them up to third year Dada. And then after everyone else went to bed, Sally taught them more. They knew if they were going to keep this group together, then they would have to teach them how to protect themselves. It was a good thing they hadn't handed out the mirrors yet. I agree that Dumbledore should be told. I don't know why we didn't tell him in the first place, Percy said, looking down on everyone, as he always did. He felt since he was the oldest, everyone should just listen to him. Mum said that they wanted to make sure everything would work out. You know how most pure bloods are. If it's Muggle, they want nothing to do with it. Even the Wisengamot tried to stop us from going to Muggle schools. Mum says that if they knew we could do the little bit of wandless magic they would try to stop that as well. Sirius says not to worry because they really have no way of tracing that, Harry said, giving up on the cards, as no one else was going through theirs. Daphne Greengrass nodded her head. I'm surprised my parents agreed with your dad when he came and talked to them. My dad thinks we should keep quiet. He thinks that Dumbledore will try and break us up when we get to Hogwarts, because some of us will go into Slytherin, and we come from neutral families, she said, ignoring Ron's glare. He never liked to think about any of them going into Slytherin. She also knew Dumbledore looked down on Slytherins, and she wanted to keep her friends. She knew that her best friend Tracy would have a hard time there because she was a half-blood. Her father and Mr. Davis were teaching them defensive spells at night after they got home. She had a feeling that the Potters were up to something, and she hoped for her and Tracy's sake it was helpful. Well, it really doesn't matter what we think. Our parents are going to do what they think is best for us, so if your parents think telling Dumbledore is cool, then that is what they're going to do, Gary said, picking his cards back up. Does anyone have Bab Yaga or Hengist of Woodcroft? I've got 3 of Gondoline Oliphant, so I'll trade you, steering the conversation back to the cards. He knew what his parents were doing, and it wouldn't help to let those who shouldn't know. Oh, wicked. I've been looking for Oliphant. I've got 2 of Bab Yaga, so I'll trade you, Ron said, holding out his card, and the trading went on from there. The conversation stayed mostly on schoolwork and Quidditch. When Taffy told them the parents were getting ready to leave, they all packed up their cards and noisily went to the flu room. Gary and Harry noticed their dad palming the notes into people's hands and figured there must have been parents that wanted to tell Dumbledore. It was okay, they had a plan, sorta. It was a shame that Mrs. Weasley didn't get a note. They were hoping that they could keep the Weasley twins, maybe after they got to Hogwarts. Chapter 12. A Like-Minded Gathering. And all spells were taken off Harry Potter Wiki. Disclaimer: I don't own anything related to Harry Potter. That privilege belonged to J.K. Rowling and all those who she lets make money for her. HPHPHP, August 1, 1989. It had taken 3 such meetings to get the die-hard Dumbledore fans sorted out from the rest. This was the last meeting of the summer, and most of the kids would be going back to the Muggle school for the last time. Percy and the Weasley twins would be in Hogwarts this year. Percy had started 2 years ago. The twins will be starting this year. It was the only day they could get everyone together. James was looking in to have their boys sign up for summer tutoring so they didn't fall too far behind in the Muggle studies. He encouraged the other parents to do the same. He figured that those that couldn't afford it could join them. They only had to keep this from 6 families: the Weasleys, the Bones, the Dunbars, the Jamesons, the Jacksons, and the Finnegans. Everyone else was gathering tonight to talk about teaching the children occlumency, disarming charms, and a few shielding charms. They were also going to talk about how to keep the kids together when they got to Hogwarts. It was around 7 p.m., and all the adults were in the dining room, and the kids were playing outside. Seated around the extended table were the Davis, the Brocklehursts, the Abbotts, the McFays, the Boots, the Corners, the Godfreys, the Greengrass, the Hopkins, the Jones, the Longbottoms, the Pattles, and the Lovegoods. Snacks and drinks were provided, and everyone settled. So, James said, clapping his hands together and looking around, glad you could make it. You all remember Sirius and Remus, right? They don't have any kids in the group, but they know what's going on. Everyone okay with them being here? I've no problem if they think they can help, Eric Davis said. He was very worried about his little princess. He was sure she would get into Slytherin, and he knew how half-bloods were treated there, and if the Potters had a plan to help her, he and his wife were all for it. Nods were seen all around the table. Good, let's get started then. Well, what Lily and I were thinking it to teach the kids occlumency. Occlumency, for those that don't know, is a way to shield one's mind from intruders. I know Dumbledore takes peeks at the students' minds to keep the troublemakers down. He used it on us, marauders, all the time when a prank went off, he said, and he winked and serious. Good thing we already knew it. Too bad Peter didn't, or we would have gotten away with everything. Oh well, he said with a shrug, and got back on topic. It's in the school charter that the headmaster can do this, if he is able. The only time he can't do it is when there hasn't been any trouble. I, for one, don't think he abuses it, but I want to be on the safe side. That and we have no idea who else can, though Lily thinks Snape, he held back a sneer, can, but she isn't sure. The rest of the parents looked around the table at each other. They hadn't known that Dumbledore could read their minds. Some who had had problems in school now realized why they had never gotten away with lying. Well, if it would protect their children from his manipulations, they would come up with a way to teach them. They whispered for a few minutes, then James drew their attention back to him with a clearing of his throat. Everyone knows that Dumbledore wants to split up our family, and I wouldn't put it past him to take a peek if he felt it was for the greater good, James said, with a grimace on his face. It shouldn't be too hard for the kids, since we've been having all the mutineers do an hour meditation every day after school. All they need to do now is put up some barriers. We're thinking of doing a guided meditation right before bed to help them with that. Anyone have any ideas? We know the basics, he said, pointing at Lily, Remus, and Sirius. But if you know something that has worked for you that you think might help, we are all for hearing it, James said, squirming down in his chair to get more comfortable. I think I might have a few suggestions, said Right Corner, making everyone look his way. I've been looking things up on the internet and researched guided meditations. I wanted to make sure that Michael was getting the best out of it. There are a few that try and organize the mind, and from what I know about occlumency, I think we can put these together and get the kids to have a pretty strong barrier before they get to Hogwarts. We can also create a mantra to keep the children from losing their heads in confrontations. If you have a pen and paper, then I can write stuff down as we talk about it, he said, thinking of all the things he had researched. Once a Ravenclaw, always a Ravenclaw. The internet was a godsend to his busy brain. Lily called for Tilly and asked for some notebooks and pencils. Tilly popped back in with the requested items and looked around the table to see if everyone had what they needed, and seeing that they did, popped back out. Lily put the items in the middle of the table so everyone who wanted one could grab it. Wright took a pencil and notebook and started jotting down his idea. Xenophilius and Pandora Lovegood both grabbed a notebook each to do the same. The rest took the notebooks and pencils, but didn't write anything down. They would wait to hear everyone else's ideas before they wrote anything. Oh, before I forget, we have these two-way mirrors, James said, holding up what looked like a square hand mirror. They basically work like a cell phone. A cell phone is phone that can be carried around in your pocket, so you are never without them. It's pretty new, so I'm not surprised you don't know about them, he added at all the confused looks. But they gave us the idea. With these mirrors, the kids will be able to talk to you and each other no matter what house they are sorted in. We'll be giving them to every family in the mutineers. We just wanted to give these to you guys tonight and show you the security feature that won't be on the other mirrors. Sirius and Remus started handing out the mirrors to the parents, one for each parent and kid. Remus took up the explanation. We used these mirrors when we had detention back in the day. If you tap the fourth rune on the back, that will silence the call. It is a modified muffliato. There's a notice me not charm on the mirror itself. Only those that know about the mirror will see them. There is another notice me not on the security rune, that way the other parents and children will not see it. I would strongly caution the kids not to use them in the hallways unless it is an emergency. If the staff finds out that the kids have these mirrors, they might wind up on the ban list, and we don't want that, he said, taking a breath. We're going to add a pocket to inside the boys' robes with a disillusion charm. We suggest you do the same for you kids. The mirrors also have an unbreakable charm. Most everyone was picking up the mirrors and examining them. How does it work? Sarita Patil wanted to know. If you look on the back, you will see some runes, Sirius said, showing everyone the 4 runes on the back. The first one is to keep the mirror in normal mode. The second to keep it in silence mode. They should use this in class and in the Great Hall, which will make it so if someone calls they won't hear their name called out. The third is to see if anyone called while in silence mode. The fourth is to put it into security mode. That is the one that will muffle the mirror. It is only on these mirrors and can't be seen by anyone who doesn't have the same type of mirror, he explained, pointing to each room. The kids can duck into an empty classroom between classes and check to see if anyone needs anything. The fourth will be what they would use when they are in bed or something. Shaking his head with a small snicker, he said, "Now I know we can tell them not to use them in detention. But I also know that that didn't work for us. So you all can do the parent thing and tell them what you will. If they want to talk to someone, they only have to say that person's name to the mirror and wait for them to answer. We're still working on a way that they can talk to more than one person at a time." "Here, let me show you," Remus said, and picking up a mirror, he tapped the first rune. "Grace Davis," he said into the mirror. The mirrors in front of Grace said her name, and she picked one up. She could see Remus's name in the mirror. What do I do to answer it?" "Just say the name that shows up in the mirror. Remus Lupin." "Hi, Grace," Remus waved from the mirror. "Okay, now tap the fourth rune." She did, and suddenly no one saw the mirror nor could they hear the conversation. They saw Grace make a motion with her finger and heard Remus say, "To end the calls, just say done." "Done," Grace said, and the mirror went blank. "Oh, this will come in handy. We can always talk to our little girl," she said, getting excited. She too was worried about Tracy. There were excited whispers around the table as everyone not writing picked up a mirror to look at them, some trying them out by calling someone at the table. They played around with them for about 10 minutes. "Right," said Wright, getting everyone's attention. "I've got a few things to add for the occlumency. I think the love goods do too. What I've researched on the internet tells that an impenetrable bubble would be best to use for a shield. It is said they would be harder to break through because they flex. If we add this into the meditation, the kids to each night, then that should, in theory, give them a good shield before they go to school." He looked down at what he had written. "Also, we might want to add organizing one's mind on there. Who has the softest voice? One that is strong yet comforting." The site's eye went to say that that is the best kind of voice to use. If we make up a script and have that person read it, we can use a recording spell on a crystal and play it for the kids every night, he said, putting the paper on the table in front of him and looked around the room. Everyone was looking thoughtful. "Well," Xenophilius said, "can it be a child? The best voice I know among us is Luna's. The only problem I see with that is keeping her on script," he said, with a soft smile for his quirky little girl. Not that he had room to talk, but Luna was usually in a world of her own, much like her mother. "Yes, your daughter's voice will be best, but I think in order for this to work we will need a stronger, more adult voice. Maybe Pandora can do it. Her voice is almost as dreamy as Luna's, and I think she will stay on script," Rachel Brocklehurst said, making a note in her notebook. "If she could put a little more softness in her voice, I think that it would be perfect." Everyone nodded. Say what you want about the Lovegoods, they did have soothing voices. "I would be happy to help keep the Raxperts from infecting the children," Pandora said, in her soft voice, looking at everyone with her large blue-gray eyes. Many people shaking their head in amusement. They were quite used to Pandora by now. "I can put the children in a meditative state. If you write up the script, then I'll follow it. We," pointing to herself and her husband, "also think that we should add creatures outside and inside the bubble. The children can pick what creature they think will best keep people out. We could say something along the lines of, now that you have your bubble, think of the scariest creature you can and have them patrol your mind, or something like that." Lily gave a slight smile. "That would be lovely, Pandora. I'm sure you would be great at it," she said. The adults talked about this for about 45 minutes, and they came up with a workable script. "Now all we need is a quiet room with some soft music in the background," D. Boot said after they had a workable script. "I've heard that that is the best type of situation for recording these types of meditations. Do you have a room that is quiet, or music that will work?" she asked Lily. Lily thought for a moment. The manor was pretty big, but she wanted to make sure that no outside noise was heard and that the room had good acoustics. She looked at James. After all, he grew up here. James thought about it and decided that the room on the top floor in the back would be a good place. It had been a music room before. His mom used it so she would not be disturbed by James when she practiced. The music room was moved to the first floor after his parents died. Both the boys liked to play a large variety of instruments. Not that they were very good, but they had fun. I've got a room in mind, but how are we going to get the music to play there? There is no wireless up there for some strange reason. The stations don't come in right. Well, Harley's McFay said, you can always record the music and then play it back while Pandora records her part. That's a great idea. Not sure why I didn't think of it, Lily said, shaking her head. Recording charms won't work in the game room, so we are going to have to find a wireless and see if they have a classical station or soft, natural music to record. Why don't I do that while you guys talk about the defensive spells we want to teach the kids, she said as she got up from the table. Okay, Lils, we will write it all down so you know what we decided, James said. Lily left the room to find a wireless and a quiet room. The rest of the parents talked about the spells they felt would be best to teach their children. They decide on Expelliarmus causes whatever the victim is holding to fly away. Petrificus totalis temporarily binds the victim. Protego shields the caster. Stupefy knocks the victim out. Finite cancels most other spells. Muffliato muffles sound so people can't hear you. And the jelly leg curse causes the victim's legs to be jelly-like. They figured that these would be easy to learn and within the children's magical ability. They tell the children to use them only if absolutely necessary. Other than that, go and get a teacher, walk away, or anything, but get into a fight. They wanted the children to stay under the radar. They were hoping that occlumency and this guided meditation would keep the hot heads from getting into too many fights. Lily came back about a half an hour later with a good recording on a crystal. She played it for everyone to see if they agreed. They did. Pandora was then shown by a house elf which room to go to for her part. She came back 40 minutes later and played her crystal for everyone, and they decided that it would work well. James called Tilly and had her go to Diagon Alley and get enough crystals for all the kids so they could record it for them. Everyone got comfortable. Some got up and chatted to other parents while they waited. Tilly came back 10 minutes later. Pandora went back to the room and recorded the extra crystals and handed them out when she came back. This took another 30 minutes. The meeting broke up around 10 p.m. and the parents grabbed their kids, who had long since retired to the game room, and went home. So, Harry said after everyone left, how did it go? It went very well. We got everyone to agree to not tell anyone. And we have a small list of spells we'll be teaching everyone on the weekends, when the other families won't be here. It's too bad that the other parents aren't backing us, James said, with a small sigh as they led the boys to their rooms. We have a crystal that'll guide you into a meditation before you go to sleep at night. It should help you create occlumency shields and organize your mind better than it already is. We suggest that if you don't know the Muffliato, then you learn it for your dorm room. He watched as Lily took Gary to his room to set up the crystal and tell him the same thing. We already know it, Dad, but thanks for thinking about us, Harry said with a small smirk and a nudge to his side. Brat, get into bed and let me set this up, James said as he tucked Harry into bed and put the crystal on the nightstand. Good night, son, he said. As he kissed his oldest on the head, he tapped the crystal with his wand and soft music started to play. Just before he closed the door, he heard Pandora's dreamy voice. He met Lily in the hall and put his arm around her and started for their bedroom. Let's go to sleep, Lily Flower. It's been a long night. Let's, Lily mumbled into his shoulder. With that, the Potters settled for the night.